You are a young artist. You debuted just a few months ago. Your music is starting to reach people. You are beginning to understand what it feels like to stand on a stage and have people sing your words back to you. And tonight, you are sitting in the middle of a stadium packed with 65,000 human beings, all of them screaming, crying, and holding glowing purple light sticks. Not for you, but for one single person standing at the center of that stage. That person's name is Park Jimin. And you can only sit there, frozen, overwhelmed, maybe crying a little, maybe crying a lot. That is exactly what happened to Santos Bravos, Latin America's newest boy band under HYB, when they witnessed the BTS Arirang World Tour live in Mexico City in May 2026. And trust me when I tell you, their reaction is something the internet will not stop talking about for a very long time. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are breaking down everything, from Jimin's jaw-dropping performance on the Mexican stage to the deeply emotional moments that left Santos Bravos completely speechless, to what all of this means for the future of music across two continents. So if you are ready, let's get into it. Before we talk about Santos Bravos and what they experienced that night, we need to fully understand how enormous this entire event actually was, because calling it just a concert would be one of the greatest understatements in the history of live music. The BTS Arirang World Tour is arguably one of the most anticipated tours in modern music history. After all 7 members, RM, Jin, Suga, jhope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, completed their mandatory military service in South Korea, the world held its breath waiting for what would come next. And what came next was Arirang, a full-scale world tour. BTS, all 7 of them, back together, back on stage, back to remind everyone exactly why they became the biggest boy band on the planet. Now, every stop on this tour has been historic. But Mexico? Mexico was on a completely different level. Mexico was not just a concert stop. Mexico was a matter of state. And I mean that literally. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, the head of one of the largest countries in the Western Hemisphere, officially wrote a letter to South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, personally requesting that BTS add more concert dates in Mexico, because tickets for the 3 scheduled nights on May 7th, 9th, and 10th at Estadio GNP Seguros sold out in under 1 hour. Over 2.1 million people flooded the Ticketmaster Mexico website just trying to get access. To put that number in perspective, if those fans had lined up physically, the queue would have stretched from Mexico City all the way to the United States border. That is over 2,000 kilometers of people, all just trying to see BTS. The government got involved. The economy felt it. The streets of Mexico City were transformed. This was not a pop concert. This was a cultural moment of national significance. And across 3 consecutive nights, 65,000 fans packed that stadium each time. On the final night alone, reports confirmed that more than 130,000 people were in and around the venue simultaneously, with over 70,000 fans who couldn't get tickets gathering outside in the streets, lighting up the night with their army bombs, just to be close to the energy inside. That is the world Jimin walked into. And what he did inside that world is the reason we are all here today. Let us talk about Park Jimin and what he brought to those stages in Mexico City, because it was not just a performance. It was a masterclass. It was a declaration. It was the kind of thing that reminds you why certain artists exist on a completely different plane than everyone else. The first moment that sent the entire internet into a spiral happened during the improvised song segment of the show. Without warning, without fanfare, without anyone expecting it, Jimin executed a side flip. Not just any side flip. This was the ultra-difficult aerial move where his entire body rotated through the air without his hands ever touching the ground. The exact same move he had performed in We Are Bulletproof PT2 a full decade ago, recreated with the same precision, the same control, the same terrifying grace. A man in his early 30s on a live stage, in front of 65,000 people, pulling off one of the hardest acrobatic moves in performance history as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The cameras on the big screens inside the stadium actually missed it. The crew wasn't ready. But the fans who were watching from the floor, the ones whose eyes never left Jimin for a single second, they caught it. Their fancam videos hit social media within minutes. Professional dancers commented on it. Fellow idols reacted. Choreographers called it extraordinary. The clip spread across every platform simultaneously, and the conversation around it has not stopped since. Because what people were watching was not just athleticism. It was the product of years and years of obsessive dedication to craft. A man who has pushed his body and his artistry to the absolute limit and then decided to push it even further. But if that moment was about power, the next one was about something softer. Something that cut even deeper. Mid-concert, while the stadium was still buzzing with electricity, Jimin noticed a young girl in the crowd who was crying. Not crying out of excitement. Genuinely overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face, unable to hold it together because she was standing just feet away from the person whose music had meant the world to her. Jimin saw her. He slowed down. He crouched at the edge of the stage, pointed directly at her, and then, in one of the most purely human gestures you will ever see from a pop star, he took off the cowboy hat he had been wearing and passed it to his staff, who carried it down to the girl. He looked at her and said, softly but clearly, "Don't cry." She absolutely fell apart. In the best possible way. The people beside her, believed to be her parents, pulled her into a hug, tears in their own eyes. And then she put on Jimin's hat, lifted her light stick into the air, and smiled the biggest smile you have ever seen on a human face. The video of that moment was watched over 50 million times within 48 hours. 50 million. Because it was not a PR stunt. It was not a planned interaction. It was just a young man who happened to be one of the most famous performers alive, choosing to stop, even for just a moment, and see a person in the crowd as an actual human being. That is Jimin. And then there was the speech. Because Jimin always prepares. In Japan, he once read an entire handwritten letter to fans in Japanese, because he wanted to speak to them in their own language. In Mexico, he did it again. He pulled out his phone, and in careful, rehearsed Spanish, he looked out at 65,000 people and said, "You listen to our songs a lot, right? Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I didn't know you'd be this amazing here. You really know how to have fun. You're the best. I love you more than anyone." The stadium did not just cheer. It erupted. Because he didn't have to do that. He could have spoken in Korean with a translator, the way many international artists do. But he chose to learn their language, to prepare something meaningful, to show up fully for the people who had been showing up for him for years. According to a Forbes report published just days before the concert, Jimin had accumulated over 97 million streams on the Mexico Spotify chart, the highest of any K-pop solo artist in the country's history. The Mexicans didn't just like Jimin. They claimed him. And that night, he claimed them right back. Now let's talk about the group that had front row seats to all of this, Santos Bravos, and why their presence at this concert carries a meaning that goes far beyond a simple fan moment. Santos Bravos is a Latin American boy band formed in 2025 by HYB Latin America through a self-titled reality competition series. The group consists of 5 members: Alejandro Aramburu from Peru, Drew Venegas from the United States, Gabby Bermudez from Puerto Rico, Cal Pena from Brazil, and Kenneth Laville from Mexico. 5 young men from 5 different countries and backgrounds, brought together under the same label that built BTS, with a mission to do for Latin music what BTS did for K-pop. Build something so genuine, so crafted, so emotionally honest that the entire world has no choice but to pay attention. They debuted in October 2025 with their single 0% and released their first EP, Duel, in March 2026. In a matter of months, they performed at Paris Fashion Week, appeared at the Lone Nuestro Awards, and began building a fan base across Latin America and beyond. By any measure, they were off to a remarkable start. But here is the thing about Santos Bravos that makes everything about that night in Mexico City even more significant. Long before they were artists, they were fans. BTS fans. The kind of fans who learned every lyric, watched every performance, and felt something shift inside them the moment they understood what BTS was actually doing. Not just making music, but building a world, building a language that people across every culture could speak and understand together. And so when Santos Bravos walked into Estadio GNP Seguros on the night of May 10th, carrying banners that read, BTS, Saca tu lado más bravo, which roughly translates to BTS, bring out your most fearless side, and BTS juntos nos vimos más brutal, BTS, Together we look even more incredible. They were not walking in as celebrities. They were walking in as something far more powerful. They were walking in as dreamers who were about to watch their dream made flesh. What happened next is the part the internet cannot stop replaying. Alejandro, who has never made a secret of the fact that Jimin is his bias, reportedly shouted, "Te amo, Jimin. I love you, Jimin," multiple times throughout the night. The guy who performs on stage with complete composure, who carries himself with the cool confidence of someone born to be in this industry, turned into an absolute fanboy the moment the lights hit the stage and the music started. And honestly, it was beautiful, because that is what real love for music looks like. It strips away the image and leaves only the feeling. Gabby, Drew, and Alejandro danced together through Mic Drop, Dynamite, and Run, songs they had known as fans, as people who listened in their bedrooms or their cars or their practice studios before they were ever artists themselves. There is something almost indescribable about watching people who have just started their own journey as performers suddenly lose themselves completely in someone else's music. It is the purest proof that the love was always real. Kenneth, the youngest member of the group, reportedly gave absolutely everything that night. Dancing, singing along, waving his army bomb with the kind of unbridled energy that you can only have when you are somewhere that genuinely makes you feel alive. And Kao, the Brazilian member who had followed BTS for years before ever setting foot in a HYB building, was seen with tears in his eyes during the show. Not the dramatic, theatrical kind of tears, the quiet kind. The kind that fall when something is so beautiful and so meaningful that your body simply doesn't know how else to respond. But the moment that brought everything together, the moment that said more than any interview ever could, reportedly came when Jimin performed that side flip. When 65,000 people collectively held their breath for a fraction of a second before erupting into the loudest sound the stadium had ever heard. At that exact moment, the members of Santos Bravos looked at each other. No words, just a look. The kind of look that says, "This is what we are chasing. This is the mountain we want to climb. This is the reason we get up every morning, put on our practice clothes, and work until our bodies are exhausted and our voices are raw. Because somewhere on the other side of all of that, there is a stage like this one, and a moment like this one, and 65,000 people screaming your name like it is the most important sound they have ever made." In the vlog they shared afterward, the members described the night as one of the most meaningful experiences of their lives. Not as artists, as human beings who are in love with music and what it can do to a room full of strangers. And one quote, reportedly spoken by one of the members after the concert, began circulating across social media almost immediately. "Now I know what we need to reach. I just saw it tonight on that stage." That is what Jimin does. That is the effect he has, not just on the 65,000 people paying to see him, but on fellow artists, on dreamers, on people who are themselves somewhere in the middle of their own long and uncertain journey towards something great. And this, more than anything, is what the BTS Arirang stop in Mexico City ultimately represents. It is not just a successful concert tour. It is proof of what happens when artists commit so completely, so sincerely, and so deeply to their craft that the love becomes impossible to contain within one country, one language, or one culture. BTS came to Mexico wearing cowboy hats and t-shirts that read Ciudad de Mexico. They attended a lucha libre match at the legendary Arena Mexico. They visited Chapultepec and the UNAM campus. They ate a traditional Mexican banderia mid-performance, and the internet lost its mind. And the legendary Luchador Mystico entered the ring wearing a custom white jacket emblazoned with the BTS logo, a Mexican icon honoring a Korean one, two worlds finding common ground in the universal language of passion and showmanship. Santos Bravos stands right in the middle of all of that. A group built on K-pop discipline but rooted in Latin soul. A group whose existence is itself a testament to what BTS opened up for the world. The idea that the formula for connection is not about where you are from, but about how honest you are willing to be, how hard you are willing to work, and how much you are willing to love the people who came to see you. They watched Jimin that night, and they saw a version of the future. Not a guaranteed one, not an easy one, but a possible one. And sometimes that is all you need to keep going. So what do we take from all of this? What is the real lesson underneath all the viral clips and the emotional vlogs and the fan cam footage that has been watched hundreds of millions of times? I think it is this: greatness is not an accident. What Jimin showed on that stage in Mexico City did not appear out of nowhere. It is the result of a man who has dedicated his entire adult life to a single pursuit: being the best performer he is capable of being. A man who, by his own admission, once considered walking away because he didn't believe he was good enough. A man who chose, every single day, to stay, to practice, to push further than felt comfortable, to be vulnerable on stage in ways that most artists are too afraid to attempt. And Santos Bravos, 5 young men who left their home countries, came together in Mexico City, went through an intense and public selection process, and chose to bet on themselves. Who watched BTS not with envy, but with fire. Who came home from that stadium not smaller, but larger. Not discouraged, but ignited. That is the story of May 2026 in Mexico City. A story about what music can do when the people making it actually mean it. A story about one extraordinary performer handing his hat to a crying child and reminding 65,000 people and 5 young artists in the crowd that at the end of the day, all of this is really about love. If this video moved you even a little, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss what we cover next. We are going to keep following the BTS Arirang World Tour, tracking the Santos Bravos journey, and bringing you every significant moment from the world of K-pop and Latin music as it happens. Drop a comment below and tell me, which Jimin moment hit you the hardest? The side flip? The cowboy hat for the crying girl? The Spanish speech? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep dreaming big, and remember what Jimin said to that little girl in the crowd. Don't cry, just smile. Purple Heart.